The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Clarence's house as James Morrison adjusted his crisp uniform and prepared for another day of service. At 28 years old, James had dedicated 6 years of his life to the Royal Protection Unit, and every day still felt like an honor. His polished boots clicked against the marble floors as he made his rounds, checking security protocols and ensuring everything was in perfect order for the royal family's daily activities. James came from a modest background in Yorkshire, where his father worked as a mechanic and his mother taught at the local primary school. Growing up, he never imagined he would one day walk the halls of royal residences, trusted with the safety and privacy of the most famous family in Britain. His journey to this position had been marked by determination, rigorous training, and an unwavering sense of duty that impressed his superiors from the very beginning. The young guard had always possessed an eye for detail that set him apart from his colleagues. While others might notice obvious security concerns or major disruptions, James picked up on the smallest inconsistencies, the tiniest changes in routine, the subtle shifts in atmosphere that often preceded larger issues. This particular skill had earned him commendations and the respect of senior officers who recognized his potential for advancement within the protection unit. On this Tuesday morning in early autumn, James was assigned to the residential wing of Clarence's house, where Queen Camilla maintained her private quarters. The assignment was considered routine, as the Queen Consort was scheduled to be away for the entire day, attending charity engagements in Birmingham. Her absence meant the area would be quiet, requiring only standard security sweeps and basic maintenance oversight. As James walked through the elegantly appointed corridors, his trained eyes automatically scanned for anything out of place. The paintings hung at their proper angles, the antique furniture remained in its designated positions, and the fresh flowers in the crystal vases had been recently arranged by the palace staff. Everything appeared exactly as it should be in this world of carefully maintained perfection. The royal household operated with clockwork precision, and James had come to appreciate the intricate choreography required to keep everything running smoothly. Staff members moved through their duties with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role and executing it flawlessly. Housekeepers, valets, secretaries, and security personnel all worked together to create an environment where the royal family could function effectively while maintaining the dignity and protocol required of their positions. James paused outside Queen Camilla's private sitting room, consulting his checklist to ensure all security measures were properly in place. The room beyond the door was decorated in soft blues and creams, with comfortable furniture that reflected the Queen Consort's personal taste rather than the more formal styles found in the public areas of the residence. Fresh roses from the palace gardens adorned a side table, and the morning light created patterns on the Persian rug that covered the polished hardwood floor. Moving through his routine with methodical care, James proceeded to check the adjacent rooms that comprised Queen Camilla's private suite. Each space told a story of comfortable elegance, filled with personal photographs, books, and carefully chosen artworks that revealed glimpses of the woman behind the royal title. There were pictures of family gatherings, images from official engagements, and candid shots that captured moments of genuine happiness and laughter. The dressing room, which served as James's next checkpoint, was a masterpiece of organization and luxury. Built-in wardrobes lined 3 walls, each section dedicated to specific types of clothing and occasions. Formal gowns hung alongside casual wear, riding attire was arranged next to garden party dresses, and an entire section was devoted to the hats and fascinators that had become such a signature part of Queen Camilla's public image. James had been in this room many times during his security rounds, but he never ceased to be impressed by the meticulous organization that governs royal wardrobe management. Every item had its place. Every accessory was catalogued and cared for by a team of dedicated staff members who understood that clothing, for members of the royal family, represented far more than personal preference. Each outfit carried symbolic weight, sent carefully considered messages, and contributed to the larger narrative of monarchy in the modern world. As he conducted his standard visual sweep of the dressing room, James noticed that one of the wardrobe doors stood slightly ajar. This was unusual, as the household staff prided themselves on leaving everything in perfect order. But it was not necessarily cause for concern. Perhaps someone had been retrieving items for dry cleaning or making adjustments to upcoming outfits for Queen Camilla's scheduled engagements. However, James's attention to detail compelled him to investigate further. Approaching the partially open wardrobe, he could see that it contained some of the more formal pieces in Queen Camilla's collection. Evening gowns in rich fabrics hung alongside ceremonial robes, and the unmistakable gleam of gold thread caught his eye. These were clearly garments reserved for the most important state occasions, the kind of events where every element of appearance would be scrutinized and analyzed by media outlets around the world. As James reached out to properly close the wardrobe door, something unusual caught his attention. Tucked behind a deep purple velvet gown, partially obscured by its flowing fabric, was what appeared to be another garment wrapped in protective cloth. The positioning was odd, as if the item had been deliberately concealed rather than properly stored, according to the wardrobe's usual organizational system. Curiosity and professional duty combined to make James examine the hidden item more closely. Carefully moving aside the purple gown, he could see that the concealed garment was wrapped in fine white muslin, the type of protective covering typically used for the most precious and delicate pieces in the royal collection. The size and shape suggested it might be a gown or ceremonial robe of significant importance. James found himself in a delicate position. His training emphasized the importance of respecting the royal family's privacy, while also maintaining security and ensuring that nothing was amiss. The discovery of what appeared to be a deliberately hidden garment raised questions that fell within his professional responsibilities to investigate, but it also required him to handle the situation with appropriate discretion and sensitivity. After a moment of consideration, James decided that he needed to examine the item more thoroughly to determine whether its concealment represented a security concern or simply an unusual storage choice. With careful hands, he began to unwrap the muslin covering, revealing glimpses of fabric that seemed to shimmer and catch the light in an extraordinary way. As the protective wrapping fell away, James found himself looking at one of the most beautiful garments he had ever seen. The gown was crafted from ivory silk that seemed to glow with an inner light, embroidered with intricate patterns in gold and silver thread that created designs of breathtaking complexity and artistry. The craftsmanship was clearly at the highest level, with every stitch and embellishment executed to perfection. But it was the style of the gown that truly captured James's attention and began to stir a memory that he couldn't quite place. The cut was distinctly regal, with a fitted bodice that would emphasize a slender waist and a full skirt designed to create a dramatic silhouette. The neckline was modest but elegant, and the sleeves showed the kind of attention to detail that suggested this was not merely a beautiful dress, but a garment created for a specific and highly significant purpose. James studied the embroidered patterns more closely, trying to understand the symbolism woven into the fabric. There were roses, thistles, and shamrocks worked in gold thread, representing the flowers of England, Scotland, and Ireland. Intertwined among these national symbols were crowns, lions, and other heraldic elements that clearly identified this as a garment connected to the highest levels of royal ceremonial tradition. The more James examined the gown, the more convinced he became that he was looking at something extraordinary. This was not simply an expensive dress, or even a formal court gown. The level of craftsmanship, the symbolic elements, and the overall design all pointed to something far more significant. This appeared to be a coronation gown, the type of garment that would be worn only once, during the most solemn and important ceremony in royal life. A chill ran down James's spine as the implications of his discovery began to sink in. If this was indeed a coronation gown, then its presence in Queen Camilla's wardrobe raised serious questions. Whose coronation was this gown intended for? Why was it hidden away rather than properly preserved in the royal collection? And most importantly, was there some plan or preparation for a coronation ceremony that he, as a member of the security detail, should have been informed about? James's mind raced through the possibilities, each one more intriguing and concerning than the last. The current monarch, King Charles III, had already been crowned, with Queen Camilla receiving her own coronation as queen consort during the same ceremony. There were no immediate plans for another coronation that James was aware of, which made the presence of this gown even more mysterious. As he continued to examine the garment, James noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. Sewn discreetly into the inner seam, almost invisible unless one knew where to look, was a small embroidered label. The stitching was delicate and precise, and as James leaned closer to read it, he could make out a single word that changed everything. Charlotte. The discovery of Princess Charlotte's name embroidered into the gown sent shockwaves through James's understanding of what he had found. Princess Charlotte, the young daughter of the Prince and Princess of Wales, was currently only a child, years away from any possibility of wearing such a garment. Yet here was what appeared to be a coronation gown specifically created for her, hidden away in Queen Camilla's private wardrobe. James carefully rewrapped the gown in its protective muslin, his mind struggling to process the implications of what he had discovered. The presence of this garment suggested forward planning on a scale that seemed almost incomprehensible. Someone had commissioned and created a coronation gown for Princess Charlotte, anticipating a future ceremony that might be decades away, and then hidden it in a location where it was unlikely to be discovered by anyone other than Queen Camilla herself. The questions multiplied in James's mind as he stood in the elegant dressing room, surrounded by the trappings of current royal life, while holding evidence of preparations for a future that seemed distant and uncertain. Who had commissioned this gown? When had it been created? Why was it being kept secret? And what did its presence reveal about the long-term planning and expectations within the royal family itself? As a member of the Royal Protection Unit, James was accustomed to maintaining discretion about the private affairs of the royal family. He had seen and heard things during his service that required absolute confidentiality, and he understood the importance of keeping royal secrets. However, this discovery felt different, more significant, and potentially more sensitive than the usual glimpses into royal private life that his position occasionally provided. James realized that he was facing a decision that could have far-reaching consequences for his career and for the royal family itself. The proper course of action was not immediately clear, and the weight of responsibility pressed down on him as he considered his options. He could report the discovery to his superiors, potentially triggering an investigation that might have unintended consequences. He could keep the secret to himself, hoping that his discretion would be appreciated and rewarded. Or he could seek guidance from someone he trusted, though finding such a person within the complex hierarchy of royal service would not be easy. The elegant dressing room, with its carefully organized collections of royal attire, suddenly felt like the center of a mystery that extended far beyond the walls of Clarence House. James looked around at the familiar surroundings with new eyes, wondering what other secrets might be hidden within the royal household. What other preparations for the future might be quietly taking place behind the scenes of public royal life. With careful hands, James returned the wrapped gown to its hiding place behind the purple velvet dress, ensuring that everything appeared exactly as he had found it. As he closed the wardrobe door and completed his security rounds, his mind continued to work through the implications of his discovery, knowing that the beautiful coronation gown bearing Princess Charlotte's name would change his understanding of royal life forever. The rest of James Morrison's shift passed in a blur of routine activities that felt anything but routine. Every security check, every patrol through the corridors of Clarence House, every conversation with fellow staff members carried an undercurrent of tension that only he could feel. The weight of his discovery pressed against his consciousness like a constant reminder that his world had shifted in ways he was still struggling to understand. As evening approached, and James prepared to end his shift, he found himself walking past Queen Camilla's dressing room once more. The door stood closed and innocent, giving no hint of the extraordinary secret hidden within. He paused for a moment, his hand resting on his security radio, wondering if he should report his discovery immediately. But something held him back, an instinct that told him to proceed with caution and careful thought rather than hasty action. The drive home to his modest flat in South London gave James time to think through the situation more carefully. The London traffic, usually a source of frustration after long shifts, provided a welcome distraction that allowed his subconscious mind to work through the implications of what he had found. By the time he reached his neighborhood, populated by young professionals and families who would never imagine the secrets he now carried, James had begun to formulate a plan. That evening, sitting in his comfortable but simple living room with a cup of tea and his laptop, James began to research everything he could find about coronation preparations and royal succession planning. What he discovered in his hours of careful online investigation only deepened the mystery and heightened his sense that he had stumbled upon something of tremendous significance. Coronation planning, James learned, was traditionally a process that began years in advance. The ceremony itself might last only a few hours, but the preparation involved hundreds of craftspeople, designers, and protocol experts working to create an event that would properly honor both tradition and the specific preferences of the person being crowned. Every element, from the music to the flowers to the ceremonial robes, required careful consideration and expert execution. The creation of a coronation gown would be one of the most important and time-consuming aspects of such preparation. The garment would need to incorporate traditional elements while reflecting the personality and preferences of the future queen. Master seamstresses and embroiderers would spend months creating such a piece, using techniques passed down through generations and materials of the finest quality available anywhere in the world. What struck James as particularly significant was the timeline involved in creating such a garment. Based on his research, a coronation gown of the complexity and quality he had seen would require at least 18 months to 2 years to complete properly. This meant that whoever had commissioned Princess Charlotte's gown had been planning for her eventual coronation years in advance, suggesting a level of forward thinking that went beyond normal royal protocol. The next morning, James returned to his duties with a new sense of purpose and observation. He had decided to gather more information before taking any action, hoping to understand the full scope of what he had discovered before potentially disrupting what might be carefully laid plans. His first opportunity came during the regular security briefing, where staff members shared information about upcoming royal engagements and any special security considerations. Commander Sarah Mitchell, the senior officer in charge of residential security, reviewed the day's schedule with her usual efficiency. Queen Camilla would be returning from Birmingham in the afternoon, followed by a private dinner with close family friends. The Princess of Wales would be visiting later in the week for a charitable foundation meeting. Prince William had several official engagements that would keep him away from the residence for most of the week. As James listened to these routine updates, he found himself studying his colleagues with new interest. Did any of them know about the hidden gown? Was he the only person who had accidentally discovered this secret, or was there a circle of trusted individuals who were aware of the preparations for Princess Charlotte's future coronation? The faces around him revealed nothing, each professional mask hiding whatever knowledge or ignorance lay beneath. After the briefing, James approached his duties with heightened awareness. Every conversation between staff members seemed potentially significant. Every delivery to the residence might contain materials related to royal wardrobe preparation. Every private meeting between members of the royal family could be discussing plans that extended far into the future. During his lunch break, James found himself in conversation with Margaret Thompson, one of the senior housekeepers who had worked at various royal residences for over 20 years. Margaret was known for her discretion and professionalism, but she also possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of royal household operations that made her an invaluable resource for newer staff members. "Margaret," James said carefully, "I've been wondering about wardrobe storage protocols. How are special ceremonial pieces typically maintained and preserved?" Margaret looked at him with interest, her experienced eyes suggesting that she recognized the serious nature behind his casual question. "Well, that depends on the significance of the piece," she replied thoughtfully. "Coronation robes and state regalia are usually kept in special climate-controlled environments, often at the Tower of London or Windsor Castle. But sometimes, pieces of particular personal significance might be stored elsewhere under special arrangements." She paused, studying James's face as if trying to determine the reason behind his inquiry. "There are protocols for everything, of course, but there are also traditions that go beyond written rules. The royal family has always been good at planning for the long term, sometimes in ways that aren't immediately obvious to those of us who work day-to-day operations." James nodded, trying to appear casually interested while absorbing every word. Margaret's response suggested that special storage arrangements were not unheard of, which made the presence of the gown in Queen Camilla's wardrobe somewhat less mysterious but no less significant. "Have you ever heard of coronation preparations beginning very far in advance?" James asked, hoping his tone remained conversational. Margaret smiled knowingly. "Oh, my dear boy, you'd be surprised how far ahead the royal family thinks. I've seen preparations for events that wouldn't take place for years, sometimes decades. They understand that their lives aren't just their own, that everything they do is part of a larger story that extends far beyond any individual person." As the afternoon wore on, James found himself assigned to escort visitors through the residence, a duty that normally provided welcome interaction with people outside the royal household. Today, however, he was distracted by thoughts of the hidden gown and what it might represent for the future of the monarchy. One of his escorts was Professor Elizabeth Harrington, a historian from Oxford University who had been invited to consult on some historical artifacts in the royal collection. As they walked through the elegantly appointed rooms, Professor Harrington shared insights about royal tradition and the evolution of ceremonial practices over the centuries. The monarchy has always been remarkable in its ability to balance tradition with adaptation, she explained as they paused before a portrait of Queen Victoria. Each generation finds ways to honor the past while making the institution relevant for their own time. It requires extraordinary planning and vision. James found himself asking, how far in advance would major ceremonial preparations typically begin? Professor Harrington considered the question seriously. That would depend on the complexity of the event. But for something like a coronation, planning often begins decades in advance. I've seen evidence of coronation preparations that started when the future monarch was still a child. The symbolism, the ceremonial elements, the regalia, everything must be carefully considered and prepared. The conversation reinforced James's growing understanding that his discovery might represent normal, if secret, royal planning, rather than something inappropriate or concerning. This realization brought some relief, but it also raised new questions about his role in keeping such secrets and the implications of his knowledge for his continued service with the Royal Protection Unit. That evening, James received an unexpected phone call from his sister Emma, a teacher in Yorkshire who followed royal news with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely admired the institution of monarchy. Emma had always been proud of her brother's role in protecting the royal family, and she often shared interesting articles or observations about royal activities. James, did you see the interview with Princess Charlotte's headmistress in today's papers? Emma asked excitedly. She mentioned how mature and thoughtful Charlotte is for her age, and how she seems to understand the responsibilities that come with her position in the royal family. James listened with new interest as Emma continued. The headmistress said Charlotte has been asking questions about royal history and the role of future queens. It's quite sweet, really, how seriously she takes her education about royal duties. After ending the call, James sat in his flat thinking about the implications of this conversation. Princess Charlotte, currently just a young girl, was already demonstrating an awareness of her future role that suggested she was being prepared for responsibilities that might be much closer than anyone publicly acknowledged. The hidden coronation gown suddenly seemed less like a distant possibility and more like a concrete preparation for an anticipated future. The next few days passed in a routine that felt charged with new significance. James continued his duties while gathering subtle information about royal household operations, wardrobe management, and long-term planning processes. Each piece of information added to his understanding of the complex world he served in. But none provided clear guidance about what he should do with his knowledge of Princess Charlotte's coronation gown. During a quiet afternoon shift, James found himself once again in Queen Camilla's residential wing. The Queen Consort was away at a literary festival, and the area was peaceful and empty. As he completed his security rounds, James made a decision that would prove to be pivotal in the unfolding story. Instead of simply walking past the dressing room, James decided to take another look at the hidden gown. His first examination had been hurried and focused on identifying what the garment was. This time, he wanted to study it more carefully, to understand the craftsmanship and symbolism that went into its creation. Once again, James carefully unwrapped the gown from its protective muslin covering. In the better light of the afternoon sun, streaming through the dressing room windows, the embroidery seemed even more extraordinary than he had initially realized. Every thread seemed to catch and reflect light, creating patterns that shifted and changed as he moved the fabric. As James examined the gown more closely, he noticed details that had escaped his attention during his first discovery. The hem was adorned with tiny pearls and crystals that formed intricate patterns representing the flora and fauna of the United Kingdom. The bodice featured embroidered crowns that incorporated the crosses and jewels of the traditional coronation regalia. Even the inner seams were finished with silk thread that matched the golden embroidery, demonstrating the absolute attention to detail that characterized true masterpiece craftsmanship. But it was a small pocket hidden within the folds of the skirt that provided James with his most startling discovery. Inside the pocket, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, was a note written in elegant handwriting. With trembling hands, James unfolded the paper and read the words that would change his understanding of everything. The note was brief but powerful. For our darling Charlotte, when her time comes to serve. May she wear this with the same grace and dedication that has defined our family for generations, with all our love and faith in her future. Grandmama and Grandpapa Charles. The discovery of this personal message from King Charles and Queen Camilla transformed James's understanding of the hidden gown completely. This was not just a piece of ceremonial clothing or even advanced planning for a distant possibility. This was a deeply personal gesture of love and confidence, from grandparents to their granddaughter, a tangible expression of their belief in her future and their desire to prepare her for the responsibilities she would one day inherit. As James carefully rewrapped the note and returned it to its hiding place, he realized that he had stumbled upon one of the most intimate and private expressions of royal family love and planning. The gown represented not just preparation for a future coronation, but also the personal hopes and dreams that King Charles and Queen Camilla held for their granddaughter's eventual reign. Standing in the elegant dressing room, surrounded by the trappings of current royal life, while holding evidence of preparations for future monarchy, James understood that his accidental discovery had revealed something beautiful and profound about the royal family's private world. The question now was what responsibility, if any, he had to this knowledge, and to the family he had sworn to protect. The weekend brought James no relief from the weight of his discovery. As he went through the motions of his normal life, shopping for groceries, visiting his local pub, and calling his parents in Yorkshire, the image of Princess Charlotte's coronation gown and the loving note from her grandparents remained constantly in his thoughts. The ordinary world around him seemed somehow less real than the extraordinary secret he now carried. On Monday morning, James returned to Clarence House with a new sense of purpose. He had spent the weekend researching royal protocol and the proper channels for reporting sensitive discoveries. What he learned reinforced his instinct that this situation required careful handling rather than immediate reporting through normal security channels. The morning briefing brought news that would complicate James's situation considerably. Commander Mitchell announced that there would be a special security audit of all royal residences in the coming weeks, including detailed inspections of private quarters and storage areas. The audit was described as routine, part of the ongoing efforts to ensure the highest levels of security for the royal family. But James understood that such an inspection would likely uncover the hidden gown. The audit will be thorough, Commander Mitchell explained to the assembled security team. Every room, every closet, every storage area will be examined and catalogued. We'll be working with household staff to ensure nothing is overlooked and that all security protocols are being properly followed. As James listened to these instructions, he realized that time was running out for him to decide how to handle his knowledge of the coronation gown. The audit would almost certainly discover the hidden garment, and when that happened, questions would be asked about why it hadn't been reported earlier. His position as the guard who had discovered it would become untenable unless he took action first. After the briefing, James sought out Margaret Thompson, the senior housekeeper whose wisdom and experience he had come to respect. He found her in the staff kitchen, reviewing inventory lists with her characteristic attention to detail. When she saw James approaching with an obviously serious expression, Margaret set aside her work and gave him her full attention. "Margaret, I need some advice about a delicate situation," James said quietly, ensuring they couldn't be overheard by other staff members. If someone were to discover something significant during their duties, something that might be meant to remain private, what would be the proper course of action? Margaret studied his face carefully, her experienced eyes recognizing the signs of someone grappling with a serious decision. That would depend on what was discovered and whether it represented any kind of security concern, she said thoughtfully. But generally speaking, discretion and respect for royal privacy would be the highest priorities. She paused, then continued with a slight smile. Of course. Sometimes the best course of action is to speak directly with the person most affected by the discovery. The royal family appreciates honesty and directness. especially when it's coupled with obvious respect for their privacy and well-being. James nodded, understanding the wisdom in Margaret's subtle suggestion. Rather than reporting his discovery through official channels or keeping it secret indefinitely, he could approach Queen Camilla directly and allow her to decide how the situation should be handled. This approach would demonstrate his discretion while also ensuring that she was aware he had accidentally discovered something she had intended to keep private. The opportunity to speak with Queen Camilla came sooner than James had expected. That afternoon, she returned early from a cancelled engagement and requested tea in her private sitting room. As the guard assigned to the residential wing, James would be responsible for ensuring her privacy and security during this quiet time. Queen Camilla arrived looking tired but cheerful, greeting the staff with her usual warmth and consideration. She had always been known for treating household employees with kindness and respect, remembering personal details about their lives and expressing genuine interest in their well-being. This reputation made James's decision to approach her feel less daunting, though the significance of what he needed to discuss still made him nervous. As Queen Camilla settled into her sitting room with her tea and a book, James positioned himself at the appropriate distance to provide security while respecting her privacy. The afternoon was quiet, with only the distant sounds of London traffic and the occasional footsteps of staff members moving through other parts of the residence. After an hour had passed and Queen Camilla had finished her tea, James made his decision. Approaching her with the proper respect and formality, he requested a moment of her time for a private conversation. Queen Camilla looked up from her book with curiosity and concern, immediately giving him her full attention. "Your Majesty," James began carefully, "I apologize for interrupting your afternoon, but I've encountered a situation during my duties that I believe you should be made aware of." Queen Camilla set aside her book and gestured for James to continue, her expression showing interest rather than alarm. "Please, sit down," she said kindly. "You look quite serious about whatever this is." James remained standing, as protocol demanded, but felt encouraged by her approachable manner. "During my security rounds last week, I discovered something in your dressing room that appears to have been placed there for safekeeping. I want you to know about my discovery, and to assure you of my complete discretion in this matter." Recognition dawned in Queen Camilla's eyes, and James could see her understanding what he was referring to without him needing to be more specific. Her initial expression of mild concern transformed into something that looked like relief mixed with appreciation. "I see," she said quietly. "And what have you done with this information?" "Nothing, Your Majesty," James replied honestly. "I felt it was important to speak with you directly, rather than report it through official channels or discuss it with anyone else. I understand that some things are meant to remain private, and I want to assure you that your confidence will be respected." Queen Camilla was quiet for a moment, studying James's face with an expression that seemed to be evaluating his character and trustworthiness. When she spoke again, her voice carried a warmth that hadn't been there before. "James, isn't it?" she asked, and when he nodded, she continued, "How long have you been with the protection unit?" 6 years, Your Majesty," James replied. "And in those 6 years, have you ever encountered a situation like this before?" "No, Your Majesty. This is quite unique in my experience." Queen Camilla nodded thoughtfully, then made a decision that surprised James completely. "Would you like to know the story behind what you discovered?" James felt his heart skip a beat. He had hoped for reassurance that his discretion would be appreciated, but he hadn't expected to be invited into the confidence behind the secret itself. "Only if you believe it would be appropriate, Your Majesty." Queen Camilla smiled, an expression that transformed her face and revealed the warmth and affection that those close to her knew well. "I think you've earned the right to understand what you've stumbled upon. Please, do sit down. This conversation may take a while." As James carefully took a seat in the chair Queen Camilla indicated, he realized that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The next hour would provide him with insights into royal family life that few people outside their immediate circle ever received, and would establish a relationship of trust that would prove invaluable in the days to come. "The gown you discovered," Queen Camilla began, "represents something very special to Charles and me. It's our way of expressing our confidence in Charlotte's future, and our desire to ensure she has everything she needs to succeed when her time comes." She paused, looking toward the windows where the afternoon light was beginning to fade. "You see, James, being part of this family means always thinking beyond your own lifetime. Every decision we make, every tradition we maintain or change, every preparation we undertake, it's all about ensuring that the monarchy continues to serve the people effectively long after we're gone." Queen Camilla's voice took on a tone of deep affection as she continued, "Charlotte is such a remarkable child. She has this wonderful combination of her father's sense of duty and her mother's natural warmth with people. Charles and I watch her, and we can already see the queen she might become someday." James listened with fascination as Queen Camilla explained how the idea for the coronation gown had developed over many months of conversations between her and King Charles. They had discussed the importance of being prepared for all possibilities, of ensuring that Charlotte would have everything she needed to step into her role with confidence when the time came. "We worked with the same craftspeople who created my coronation gown," Queen Camilla revealed. "Master seamstresses who understand not just the technical requirements, but the symbolic importance of every element. We wanted Charlotte's gown to honor tradition while reflecting her own personality and the values we hope she'll bring to her eventual reign." The creation process, Queen Camilla explained, had been conducted in absolute secrecy. Only a handful of people knew about the project, and each had been sworn to discretion. The gown had been completed just a few months earlier and was being kept in her wardrobe as the safest location until a more permanent storage arrangement could be established. "The note you found?" Queen Camilla said with a gentle smile. "That was something Charles insisted we include. He wanted Charlotte to know, when her time comes, that we believed in her. From the very beginning, that we saw her potential and wanted to give her every advantage for success." As James listened to this explanation, he began to understand the depth of love and planning that went into royal family preparations. This wasn't just about protocol or tradition. It was about grandparents wanting to give their granddaughter the best possible foundation for a future that would be filled with enormous responsibility and public scrutiny. "Your Majesty," James said carefully, "there's something else you should know. There's going to be a comprehensive security audit of all royal residences in the coming weeks. The gown will almost certainly be discovered during that process." Queen Camilla nodded, appearing unsurprised by this information. "Yes, we've been expecting that. Charles and I have been discussing how to handle the inevitable discovery. Your coming to me today actually helps us tremendously, because now we know we have someone we can trust to help manage the situation appropriately." She looked at James with an expression that conveyed both gratitude and a new level of respect. "Would you be willing to help us ensure that this discovery is handled with the proper discretion when the audit takes place?" James felt honored by the trust being placed in him, but he also understood the weight of responsibility that came with it. "Of course, Your Majesty. Whatever assistance you need." "Excellent," Queen Camilla said, her relief evident. "Then let me explain what we had in mind, and how your role in this discovery might actually help us turn what could be an awkward situation into something positive." As the afternoon light faded outside the windows of Clarence House, James found himself being drawn into plans that would test his discretion, his loyalty, and his understanding of what it truly meant to serve the royal family. The simple discovery of a hidden gown was about to become something much more complex and significant than he had ever imagined possible. The plan that Queen Camilla outlined to James over the course of their private conversation was both elegant and practical, demonstrating the kind of careful thinking that had made her such an effective member of the royal family. Rather than trying to hide the coronation gown during the upcoming audit, they would use the discovery as an opportunity to begin gradually introducing the public to the idea that preparations for future generations were already underway. "The key," Queen Camilla explained, "is to control the narrative from the beginning. If the gown is discovered during a routine security audit, with no context or explanation, it becomes a mystery that invites speculation and possibly unwanted attention. But if we can present it as part of a thoughtful, long-term approach to royal planning, it becomes a positive story about family love and institutional continuity." James listened with growing admiration for Queen Camilla's strategic thinking. She understood that modern monarchy required constant attention to public perception and media narrative. and she was proposing to turn his accidental discovery into an opportunity to strengthen public understanding of royal family values. Over the next few days, James found himself working closely with Queen Camilla and her private secretary to develop a plan that would protect the family's privacy while satisfying the public's natural curiosity about royal life. It was decided that when the security audit discovered the gown, James would be positioned to provide context and explanation that would frame the story positively. The audit began the following week, with teams of security specialists and household management experts conducting systematic reviews of every area within the royal residences. James watched with nervous anticipation as the inspection moved through Clarence House, knowing that the discovery of Princess Charlotte's coronation gown was inevitable. When the audit team reached Queen Camilla's dressing room, James was present as the designated security liaison. As the inspectors worked through the carefully organized wardrobes, James positioned himself to observe the moment when they would encounter the hidden gown behind the purple velvet dress. The discovery unfolded exactly as James had anticipated. One of the audit specialists noticed the partially concealed garment and called for closer inspection. As the team began to unwrap the protective muslin covering, their initial professional demeanor gave way to obvious amazement at the extraordinary craftsmanship they were revealing. "This appears to be a coronation gown," announced the lead auditor. A woman named Diana Clark, who had extensive experience with royal ceremonial artifacts. "The quality and symbolic elements suggest it's intended for a very significant ceremony." At this point, James stepped forward with the explanation that he and Queen Camilla had prepared. "I believe I can provide some context for this discovery," he said calmly. "I encountered this gown during routine security rounds last week and reported it to Her Majesty Queen Camilla. She asked me to be present during the audit to explain the situation." The audit team listened with fascination as James explained, with Queen Camilla's permission, that the gown had been commissioned as a gesture of love and confidence for Princess Charlotte's future. He emphasized the family's commitment to long-term planning and their desire to ensure that future generations would be properly prepared for their royal responsibilities. Diana Clark examined the gown with expert eyes, noting the traditional elements combined with subtle modern touches that reflected contemporary royal style. "This is extraordinary craftsmanship," she said admiringly. "The symbolism is perfectly executed, and the attention to detail is remarkable. Whoever commissioned this clearly understands both royal tradition and the importance of preparing for the future." The audit team's reaction was exactly what Queen Camilla had hoped for. Rather than viewing the discovery as secretive or inappropriate, they saw it as evidence of thoughtful family planning and institutional continuity. The story that would emerge from the audit would focus on the royal family's dedication to preparing future generations for their roles, rather than on any sense of mystery or impropriety. News of the discovery spread through the household staff with the speed that always characterizes palace gossip. However, because the context had been established from the beginning, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Staff members spoke admiringly of the king and queen consort's thoughtfulness in preparing for Princess Charlotte's future, and many expressed hope that they might be able to serve during her eventual reign. Margaret Thompson sought out James later that day to express her approval of how the situation had been handled. "You showed real wisdom in speaking directly to Her Majesty," she told him with a smile. "That kind of discretion and good judgment will serve you well throughout your career." The media attention that followed the audit was precisely what Queen Camilla had hoped to achieve. Rather than sensational speculation about secret preparations, the story was presented as a heartwarming example of royal family love and long-term thinking. Newspapers ran features about the tradition of coronation gowns and the craftsmanship involved in creating such ceremonial pieces. Princess Charlotte herself, though still a young girl, was reportedly delighted when she learned about her grandparents' gift. According to sources close to the Wales family, she had expressed amazement at the beautiful gown and pride that her grandfather and grandmother believed so strongly in her future capabilities. The success of this careful narrative management had unexpected benefits for James's career within the Royal Protection Unit. His demonstration of discretion and good judgment in handling such a sensitive discovery earned him recognition from senior officers who were always looking for staff members with the right combination of professionalism and personal integrity. Commander Mitchell called James to her office a few weeks after the audit to discuss his performance and future prospects within the unit. "Your handling of the coronation gown discovery was exemplary," she told him. "You showed exactly the kind of thinking we want from our officers, balancing security responsibilities with respect for royal privacy." She went on to explain that James was being considered for advancement to a more senior position that would involve closer work with the royal family on long-term security planning. "The king and queen consort specifically requested that you be considered for roles requiring higher levels of trust and discretion," Commander Mitchell revealed. "That kind of royal endorsement is unusual and reflects the impression you made during this situation." The weeks following the discovery brought James into much closer contact with the royal family than his previous position had allowed. Queen Camilla, in particular, seemed to appreciate having someone on the security team who understood the complexities of managing public perception while protecting family privacy. She occasionally sought his input on security arrangements that involved balancing openness with the public against the need for personal space and private family time. During one of these consultations, Queen Camilla shared more details about the planning that had gone into Princess Charlotte's coronation gown and the broader preparations being made for the future of the monarchy. "You see, James," she explained, "everything we do today is really about ensuring that Charlotte and her generation will be ready to serve effectively when their time comes. The gown is just one small part of a much larger effort to prepare them for success." This broader perspective helped James understand that his discovery had been part of something much more significant than he had initially realized. The royal family was engaged in comprehensive planning that extended decades into the future, considering every aspect of how the monarchy would need to evolve to remain relevant and effective for future generations. Princess Charlotte's coronation gown represented just one element of this planning, but it was an important symbol of the family's confidence in her potential and their commitment to providing her with every resource she would need to succeed. The love and care that had gone into its creation reflected the deep personal bonds within the royal family, even as it served the broader institutional purpose of preparing for constitutional continuity. As autumn progressed into winter, James settled into his expanded role with growing confidence and satisfaction. His work now included responsibilities that brought him into regular contact with senior royal household officials, and he found himself involved in planning processes that would have been unimaginable when he first joined the protection unit. The experience had also changed James's understanding of what it meant to serve the royal family. Beyond the obvious security responsibilities and protocol requirements, he now saw that true service involved understanding the delicate balance between public duty and private life that defined modern monarchy. The royal family's ability to maintain dignity and effectiveness while living under constant public scrutiny required support from staff members who could think strategically about both immediate needs and long-term implications. One evening, as James was completing his shift at Clarence House, Queen Camilla approached him with a special request. "James, I have something I'd like you to consider," she said with a smile that suggested she had good news to share. "Princess Charlotte will be visiting next week for tea with her grandfather and me," Queen Camilla continued. "We thought it might be nice for her to see the gown that has generated so much positive attention. Would you be available to assist with security for that visit?" James felt honored to be included in such a personal family moment. "Of course, Your Majesty. I would be delighted to help ensure the visit goes smoothly." "Excellent," Queen Camilla said. "I think Charlotte would enjoy meeting the guard who discovered her special gown and handled the situation with such care. It will help her understand that there are people working behind the scenes to support her future, even when she's not aware of it." As James prepared for Princess Charlotte's visit, he reflected on how dramatically his life had changed since that morning when he had noticed a slightly open wardrobe door during routine security rounds. What had begun as a simple observation had evolved into a deeper understanding of royal family dynamics, a new level of professional responsibility, and a personal appreciation for the complex challenges facing modern monarchy. The discovery of Princess Charlotte's coronation gown had revealed not just a beautiful piece of ceremonial clothing, but a window into the love, planning, and hope that characterized the royal family's approach to preparing for the future. James now understood that he had been privileged to witness something truly special, a tangible expression of the values and vision that would guide the monarchy for generations to come. The day of Princess Charlotte's visit to Clarence House dawned crisp and clear, with the kind of bright winter sunshine that made London look its most beautiful. James arrived early for his shift, wanting to ensure that every security detail was perfect for what he knew would be a special and memorable afternoon for the royal family. As he conducted his preliminary security checks, James found himself pausing outside Queen Camilla's dressing room, the place where his discovery had started this extraordinary chapter of his career. The room looked exactly as it always had, elegant and organized, giving no hint of the secrets it had once contained or the changes it had brought to his life. Princess Charlotte arrived at 3 o'clock precisely, accompanied by her protection officer and looking every inch the young royal she was becoming. At 11 years old, she carried herself with a natural grace that suggested she was already growing into her future role. But her excitement about seeing the coronation gown was charmingly childlike and genuine. Queen Camilla greeted her granddaughter with obvious delight, and James could see the strong bond between them as they embraced and began chatting about Charlotte's school activities and recent family events. The warmth and normalcy of their interaction reminded James that beneath all the protocol and public attention, this was simply a grandmother spending time with a beloved granddaughter. After tea and conversation in the sitting room, Queen Camilla led Charlotte toward the dressing room where the coronation gown was now properly displayed on a specially designed stand. James followed at a respectful distance, honored to witness this private family moment while maintaining his professional responsibilities. Charlotte's reaction to seeing the gown exceeded everyone's expectations. Her eyes widened with amazement as she took in the intricate embroidery, the shimmering fabric, and the obvious care that had gone into every detail. For several moments, she simply stood in silent appreciation, studying the craftsmanship with an attention to detail that impressed the adults watching her. "Grandmama, it's absolutely beautiful," Charlotte finally said, her voice filled with awe. "I can't believe you and Grandpapa had this made for me." Queen Camilla smiled with obvious pleasure at her granddaughter's reaction. "We wanted you to know that we believe in your future. Darling, this gown represents our confidence in the queen you'll become someday." Charlotte moved closer to examine the symbolic elements woven into the fabric, asking thoughtful questions about the significance of various design elements and the traditional meanings behind the colors and patterns. Her curiosity and intelligence were evident as she demonstrated an understanding of royal symbolism that was remarkably sophisticated for someone her age. "May I try it on?" Charlotte asked hopefully. Queen Camilla had anticipated this request and had already made the necessary arrangements. "Of course, darling. We had it fitted based on your current measurements, knowing that it can be adjusted as you grow." With the assistance of Queen Camilla's personal dresser, Charlotte was carefully helped into the coronation gown. As the ivory silk settled around her and the golden embroidery caught the light, something magical happened. For a moment, everyone in the room could see the future queen that Charlotte would become, the dignity and grace that she would bring to her eventual role. James felt a lump in his throat as he watched this transformation. The young girl who had entered the room full of excitement about seeing a beautiful dress had somehow been replaced by a vision of future monarchy, regal and composed in a way that seemed almost otherworldly. Charlotte stood before the mirror, studying her reflection with a seriousness that suggested she was beginning to understand the weight of what the gown represented. "I feel different wearing it," she said quietly. "More responsible." Somehow, Queen Camilla moved to stand beside her granddaughter, both of them reflected in the mirror that had witnessed so much royal history. "That's exactly right, Charlotte. The clothes we wear for ceremonial occasions aren't just beautiful garments. They're reminders of our duties and our connection to all the queens who came before us." After Charlotte had spent some time admiring the gown and asking questions about coronation traditions, Queen Camilla introduced her to James, explaining his role in discovering the gown and ensuring that the story was handled appropriately. "Your Majesty," James said with a proper bow, feeling slightly nervous about meeting the young princess, whose future he had inadvertently glimpsed. Charlotte extended her hand with the natural grace that seemed to come so easily to her. "Thank you for taking such good care of my gown," she said with genuine warmth. "Grandmama told me how thoughtful and discreet you were about everything." James was struck by Charlotte's poise and consideration. Despite her youth, she seemed to understand the delicate nature of the situation and the importance of discretion in royal life. "It was my honor," "Your Majesty, the gown is truly extraordinary. Would you like to know a secret?" Charlotte asked with a mischievous smile that reminded James she was still very much a child, despite her royal responsibilities. When James nodded, Charlotte continued with obvious delight. "Grandmama and Grandpapa are having similar things made for Prince George and Prince Louis. Not coronation robes, of course, since they won't be monarchs, but special ceremonial pieces for important occasions. They want all of us to be prepared for our futures." This revelation helped James understand that Princess Charlotte's coronation gown was part of an even larger pattern of preparation and planning within the royal family. The love and forethought that had gone into creating her gown was being extended to her brothers as well, ensuring that the entire next generation would be properly equipped for their various roles within the monarchy. As the afternoon drew to a close and it was time for Charlotte to return to her parents, she took one last look at her coronation gown, now carefully returned to its display stand. "I'll try to be worthy of it," she said solemnly, a statement that revealed her growing understanding of the responsibilities that awaited her. Queen Camilla embraced her granddaughter tenderly. "Darling, you already are worthy of it. The gown was made with such love and confidence because we can already see the remarkable person you're becoming." After Charlotte's departure, Queen Camilla invited James to join her for a brief conversation about the afternoon's events. "What did you think of our Charlotte?" she asked with obvious pride. "She's remarkable, Your Majesty," James replied honestly. "The way she handled seeing the gown, her questions, her understanding of what it represents, it all suggests she has a natural instinct for her future role." Queen Camilla nodded with satisfaction. "Charles and I feel the same way. We watch her, and we see someone who will be ready for whatever challenges await her generation of royals. The world will be very different by the time she becomes queen, but she'll have the foundation to adapt and serve effectively." In the months that followed Charlotte's visit, James continued to excel in his expanded role within the Royal Protection Unit. His demonstrated discretion and understanding of royal family dynamics made him increasingly valuable for assignments requiring special sensitivity and trust. The story of Princess Charlotte's coronation gown had become a positive symbol of royal family values and long-term thinking. Media coverage continued to emphasize the thoughtfulness behind the gesture and the loving relationship between Charlotte and her grandparents. Public opinion polls showed increased approval for the monarchy's approach to preparing future generations for service. For James, the entire experience had transformed his understanding of what it meant to serve the royal family. He had learned that true protection involved more than physical security. It required understanding the delicate balance between public duty and private life, between tradition and modernity, between the needs of the institution and the desires of the individuals who embodied it. The coronation gown remained on display in Queen Camilla's dressing room, where it served as a daily reminder of the hope and planning that characterized the royal family's approach to the future. Occasionally, other members of the family would visit to see the gown, and James was often present to provide security during these private family moments. Each visit reinforced his understanding of the deep bonds within the royal family and their shared commitment to ensuring the monarchy's continued relevance and effectiveness. Prince William and Princess Catherine expressed their gratitude for the love and support Charlotte was receiving from her grandparents. King Charles spoke movingly about his hopes for his granddaughter's future reign and his confidence in her potential. As winter turned to spring, James received news that would mark another significant milestone in his career. He was being promoted to senior protection officer and would be assigned to work directly with the Prince and Princess of Wales and their children. The recommendation had come directly from King Charles and Queen Camilla, who felt that his handling of the coronation gown situation demonstrated the kind of judgment and discretion required for this level of responsibility. On his last day at Clarence House, Queen Camilla summoned James for a private farewell conversation. "I want you to know how much your service has meant to us," she said warmly. "Your discovery of Charlotte's gown could have been handled in many different ways, but you chose the path that protected our family's privacy, while allowing us to share our love for Charlotte with the public in a positive way." She paused, then continued with obvious emotion. "The monarchy survives and thrives because of people like you, James. People who understand that service isn't just about following orders, but about using good judgment to protect what matters most. Charlotte will need people like you around her as she grows into her role." As James prepared to leave Clarence House for his new assignment, he took one last look at the dressing room where his extraordinary journey had begun. The coronation gown stood in its place of honor, beautiful and symbolic of all the hope and love that surrounded Princess Charlotte's future. James understood that his accidental discovery had given him more than just insight into royal family life or advancement in his career. It had shown him the profound responsibility that came with serving an institution that represented continuity, tradition, and the hopes of millions of people around the world. Princess Charlotte's coronation gown would wait patiently for the day when she would wear it as Queen of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms. When that day eventually came, decades in the future, James knew that he would remember this moment and the privilege he had been given to witness the love and preparation that surrounded one of the most important traditions in British life. The gown represented more than beautiful craftsmanship or royal ceremony. It embodied the eternal optimism of grandparents for their grandchild, the institutional commitment to preparing for the future, and the enduring power of love to transcend the formal protocols of royal life. For James, it would always symbolize the day he learned what it truly meant to serve not just the crown, but the people who wore it with such grace and dedication.